Good day, everyone. We're about to begin our webinar now. I am Lee Judge, Marketing Programs Manager at Jakarta. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Our webinar is entitled Clone Your Best Agents. Learn how to make all your agents your best agents while optimizing your processes. As a reminder, there will be a question and answer session following the presentation, so feel free to type your questions into the Q&A window during the webinar. And now our featured presenter, the Executive Director of Solution Consulting at Jakarta, Kumaran Shanmuhan. Kumaran?
Thank you, Lee. Hello, everyone. It's absolutely my pleasure to talk to you today, although I have to admit that I have a bit of a sore throat, so I may be coughing occasionally during the presentation. Certainly, I'll take full advantage of the mute button on my phone, but I apologize if I happen to cough here and there. So just to give you some heads up. All right, so thank you for taking time out of your day today to attend this webinar. And since this is the first Jakarta event for quite a few of you, I'd like to briefly introduce Jakarta to you so that you know who we are and what we do. Jakarta was founded in 1990. We provide solutions that simplify customer service across multiple channels and touch points. We serve various industries in the Americas, EMEA, and APAC regions. We tend to have a laser focus on return on investment, and you can be certain that you'll hear quite a bit about that in the presentation today. Okay, clone your best agents. Every time we see a high performer in our teams, we tend to tell ourselves, I wish I could clone him. I wish I could clone her, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's possible to clone your best agents, optimize your processes, and improve your customer experience. There is a framework to make this happen, and I will be walking you through Jakarta's solution to clone your best agents today. In the context of this webinar, we will review some analyst research, share some stories from the field about best practices and pitfalls you should consider while trying to clone your best agents. Finally, we'll wrap up with some Q&A, as Lee mentioned. So why are we gathered here today? Why clone your best agents? To understand that, we need to first examine the state of customer experience today. We need to ask why it is so challenging to provide consistently superior customer experience at a reasonable cost. Well, first of all, you interact with your customers across multiple channels. And these channels, unfortunately, are not as connected as you would like. And as a result, quite often, customers are unable to continue a conversation across channels without having to start over. And this obviously disrupts the experience. So let's dig a level deeper now. Let's say the customer is now in touch with your employee discussing their specific request. Again, it doesn't matter whether this conversation happens over phone, chat, or even on Twitter. Irrespective of the channel, the agent has to access multiple systems and deal with a maze of applications while complying to processes and policies that have been outlined by various internal departments, and somehow weave the necessary pieces together and help the customer with what they need. And as if that wasn't enough, there are competing objectives that govern the agent's performance. Needless to say, customer experience suffers significantly due to these disconnects. Disconnects across channels, disconnects across tools and processes, and sometimes even disconnects within workforce goals. While you recognize these challenges, and while you know that these challenges impede your progress, you also know that you have several rock stars in your teams, those high performers who overcome these challenges and wow customers time after time. Research suggests that if you're lucky, 1 in every 4 of your reps are those rock stars. And this webinar is all about taking their secret sauce and making it available for the rest of your teams. So all that is well and good, but before we dive into the framework and the solution that Jakarta proposes, I think you ought to review some of the relevant industry trends. So how are your peers spending their contact center dollars? Which technologies are they investing in? So let's take a look at that. So here's some research that Forrester and CustomerThink.com did in the early part of this year. The research revolves around the adoption of different customer service technologies in the contact center space, and you see the distribution here. So on the far left, there are a number of technologies which are seen as core enablers for delivering customer service. Your case management, WFM, quality monitoring, different channels of support. So these are the must-haves. So invariably, customer service providers need to invest in these technologies, so there's no surprise there. And then in the middle, we see a set of social technologies. Again, there's no surprise. In the last 3-4 years, there's been quite a bit of investment in this area, reacting to the emergence of the social customer. And then on the far right, there are some technologies categorized as those that enable a personalized customer service experience. And this is going to be the subject of the discussion today. And I'm sure that, again, this is not net new information for you because you have clearly been investing in these areas. But there was something that piqued my interest about this report, and that is this. So when we look at real-time guidance, I noticed that it was currently at an adoption level of 35%. And the report also said that another 40% of the participants in the surveys indicated that they were actively considering to adopt this technology in their contact centers. Interestingly enough, this aligns very well with our own experience at Jakarta. Now, we conduct a number of discovery workshops in contact centers across different industries, different geographies, and we listen to practitioners like you every day. And more, we've seen a significant request or a demand for these kinds of real-time guidance or next best action or process guidance type solutions in contact center environments in the last 3-4 years. And this is because these solutions are seen as enablers for improved efficiencies, customer experience, and in several cases, higher revenue generation as well. So in this webinar, we'll show you how you can take the collective genius of your best agents and provide real-time guidance to the rest of your workforce so that they may benefit from your best agent's secret sauce. So, all right, so I guess we all agree that there is something unique about your top performers, that they're able to provide exemplary service despite all those challenges. So let's spend a moment to recognize why they stand out. What is that secret sauce? And here are a few of those. I'm sure there are more. Well, first of all, these reps are very good at anticipating the customer's common questions and needs. They know your processes inside out, sometimes even more than management, even more than trainers, because they deal with the nuances and the exception conditions every day. And they figure out the best way to fulfill the customer's needs. And when I say best way, they know how to conform to a policy requirement. They know how to make the best judgment call in a tricky situation. And they know how to navigate your systems. They know your tools very well. They know all the shortcuts. They are your power users. They can almost navigate your systems without looking at screens. And finally, they know how to engage in a conversation. They know how to manage difficult conversations because that's pretty much what they do for a living. So how do we take these skills? Some of these are soft skills, some of these are technical skills, some of these are skills that you need to develop over several years of experience. So how do you take these skills and how do you clone your best agents? Well, there's a framework. No surprise here, I would imagine. So you would create a focus group of subject matter experts. I'm quite certain that you do that today in your contact centers. Whenever you make a change to your processes or bringing in a new system, you leverage this focus group approach to get feedback from your reps. So let's start with that. So you create a focus group of subject matter experts, and these could be your best agents, your senior reps, your supervisors, call center managers, process owners, business analysts. And then you need to enable your subject matter experts to create customer interaction flows. And customer interaction flow, we'll get into the definition of what that is, and we'll show you some examples of that as well in today's presentation. So essentially, you're allowing them to create these flows, and in these flows, they are able to embody their knowledge of your systems, of your processes, the best practices. And now that they've expressed their knowledge, and now you need to also give them an opportunity to express their skills, their super user skills, right? So you need to be able to automate several steps within any flow so that when you're copy pasting information from one application to another, you're able to do that in a shorter amount of time. If there is a process that is prone to human error, perhaps you automate it so that you avoid error, you avoid callbacks, you increase your FCR. And that's a very important part of the process because that's going to help drive significant benefits to the bottom line. And then you make these flows available to all of your agents, and then you continue to measure that so that you're able to continuously improve upon this process. All right, I can almost hear some of you saying, well, if it were that easy, we would have done it already, right? And there is a lot of truth to that perspective. In fact, it is very important that we examine what's keeping you from achieving this goal state. Excuse me. So I believe it starts here. So we talked about creating this focus group of subject matter experts. The biggest challenge with cloning your best agents is that it's not that your subject matter experts don't know what needs to be done in every single situation, or that you don't have knowledge management systems to document that information, or the best training tools, the best quality monitoring systems and processes to manage and optimize that process. But there is a certain aspect of this customer service complexity which is not really captured in any of those frameworks, in any of those tools. And that is what we're looking at here. Typically, a customer conversation, customer interaction, happens where multiple contexts overlap. So what do I mean by that? Well, an agent interacts with your customer. Your employee interacts with a customer with a certain context, and then that's a human-to-human interaction. And while you're doing that, you're also interacting with systems and tools. And while you're doing that, there are different processes and business rules that they have in their heads that they're trying to apply to that conversation. And while all of this is happening, the customer has their own perspective of what ought to be done in that situation. So it's a very dynamic environment. So what's really lacking is that your SMEs need a framework where they can express themselves, where they can express this complexity, where they can express the very dynamic nature of a customer interaction. And if you can give them that framework, at that point, I'm quite certain that you will be able to clone your agents. So what does that framework look like? So what you're looking at is essentially Jakarta's answer to that question. What you see here is a visual interaction designer. As you can tell, it's a drag and drop environment. Looks very much like a flowcharting tool. So this is a tool that a business user would use, any of your subject matter experts could use, to drag and drop different components onto a canvas and quickly create a flow. So they can ask questions here, they can interact with backend systems, push and pull information, they can evaluate different business rules, they can provide guidance on compliance, policies, they can automate interactions with backend systems, so on and so forth. And most importantly, in addition to expressing their knowledge, they are also able to automate all those shortcuts which your subject matter experts know very well. And these are the things that come with experience. And those are the things that you will be able to automate in this kind of an environment. So it can be a lookup of customer information from a backend CRM application. It can be updating information or searching a knowledge base, triggering a back office workflow, copy-pasting information. How common is that in the contact center environment? Things of that nature. So again, you can very clearly see how this kind of an approach allows you to reduce your average handle time, avoid errors and thereby avoid callbacks and improve your FCR. There's a training benefit as well, obviously, because you're dealing with a live process. And likewise, from a revenue generation standpoint, we have customers using this solution for customer service, tech support, and even for sales, for campaign execution, for upsell and cross-sell, for handling objections, pitching value statements, so on and so forth. The next aspect is about making the flows available to your reps, and this needs to be done in a very agile manner. Your business rules tend to change quite frequently, and you may need to move faster than the next enterprise release cycle will allow you to. And these flows can be published into a live environment through a standard approval process so that business and IT and relevant stakeholders can review your changes and make it available into a production environment without any further delays. And let's say that now we've made it available to your reps, and now we'd like to walk you through a demonstration to give you some perspective on what the user experience might look like. So I'm going to go ahead and share my application here. We've prepared a demonstration. Let's wait a few seconds for the screens to refresh. And you should be able to look at a Siebel application on the screen. Excuse me. So again, this is a legacy version of a Siebel application. This could be any other application. We are primarily using this as an example. So we talked about process guidance. We talked about different things that the rep needs to do, business rules that they have to remember, things they have to follow, the training that is required for systems and training that is required to understand the process, so on and so forth. So first of all, I'm going to walk you through how the rep would typically do it, follow a caller authentication process within Siebel today, and then we'll look at how the Jakarta solution can help by providing guidance through that process. So here's the screen, and the very first thing you'll see is that the rep does a search for a company. You're entering the name and you're doing a search. And once the results pop in, there are a couple of contact information details at the bottom. And typically when the call comes into a call center, most of you have a rigorous authentication process, and that's what we're going to look at today. So the rep needs to look at, who's the caller and do they have the authority to discuss the specific account. So you need more information about that contact. So the rep will click on that link, go to another screen where there's some more information about the contact. In this case, we see the social security information, the date of birth, and their zip code, and then their email address. And you may have different kinds of rules to enforce an authentication requirement, especially in financial services organizations. This is pretty stringent. So let's say that the caller needs to answer any 3 out of these 4 questions accurately in order to validate their authority. And today, the way in which this is done is, your rep would go into the screen, they would ask these questions, and then the customer may or may not provide it, and then the rep will handle the call from that point onward. Quite often, and then there are sometimes automated notes that need to be generated for this information. So the rep will spend some time during after-call work writing up, yes, I asked these questions, and this was answered. And that's the manual process, and that's how it's done today. Excuse me. So the Jakarta solution, we are back in this environment where you're able to see the visual designer that we looked at previously. You see all the drag and drop items at the top, and you see the flow in the main canvas. So there's a greeting that the call starts with, and then there's a search to get information from Siebel, which is when we integrate with Siebel to get the information. And then there's an authentication process, and then there are rules that are evaluated to determine if the caller answered 3 out of 4 questions accurately. And if all of that was well and good, we say that the customer has been authenticated, and we continue with the call. And this is the flow, and as you can see, it's very much like a flow chart, and this is definitely something your subject matter experts can build without any help from any coding or any programming from IT. And all you would need from an integration standpoint is these drag and droppable items that you see at the top, and these would be things that IT would provide so that as a business user you have a very sanitized environment that allows you to integrate with backend systems and design your own flows. So that's done. So now let's look at what the user experience might be like. So we are running this in a side-by-side mode where you're looking at the flow on the left-hand side and the application itself is on the right. And we are starting the call with the greeting, asking for the caller information. The rep is entering that information into the form on the left-hand side. Again, this is a user interface that can be completely designed by a business user. So you click next, and we saw that the screen refreshed on the right-hand side. We integrated with Siebel, pulled some information, brought it back into the call flow, and we're presenting those 4 questions with information about that account. And now the rep can very easily say which questions the customer answered, and we can continue with the flow. And as you do this, you'll see that excuse me, you'll see that the rep does not have to care about where the information resides within an application. The process directs them through the flow one step at a time. And if there is any automated notes that need to be generated for auto dispositioning, we can do that, thereby saving after-call work. If this needs to be audited for audit trail reasons, We can audit the fact that these were the specific questions that we asked, and this is what the customer answered. Again, it's a very simple example, but you can very easily see how this parallels with processes and complexities that you might have in your environments. So this is one mode where we show the guidance in a side-by-side type of an environment, and then from the left-hand side, we are driving things into the applications. Again, for sake of simplicity, we use just one application in this demonstration, but quite commonly in our implementations, any given step might involve multiple applications, and the tool is fully capable of pulling in information from multiple systems and driving a call flow seamlessly. So that's one example, and there are also other user experiences that we are able to provide. And I'd like to walk you through another example now. So now we are going to look at a different example here. We're looking at another CRM application, Sugar CRM. And in this mode, let's say that the user interface is pretty direct, and the user is able to go into the application and do all their work very easily. But there are some business rules that you may want to enforce, right? And some alerts that you want to provide. So how do you provide that reactive guidance based on what the user is doing, based on the account that is being looked up, based on all those business rules? If you want to provide an alert and then provide some step-by-step guidance to handle a specific interaction, how do you do that? So in this case, we're going to look up an account. It will be this arts and crafts account. And as you can tell, there's a lot of information in this one page. High-level account information, activities, history, case notes, contact information, so on and so forth. But regardless of how much information is there in this field, you might really care about specific pieces of information that are valuable to that customer interaction, such as, in this example, perhaps this is a premium customer, and let's just say that there is a new ticket that they opened recently, and perhaps we want to, in the interest of providing superior customer service, we want to proactively ask them, hey, did you have any concerns regarding that case, or did you need any help with that? And we want to provide some guidance on the fly. So now let's look at how this can be done using the tool. All right, so we are back in this familiar environment, and you'll see those business rules being evaluated at the top. Open case, it's a premium customer. If those conditions are valid, then go ahead and show them an alert. And based on how the customer reacts, there may be some additional steps that we may do, like updating the case or sending an email confirmation to the customer, things like that. And in a moment, we'll look at what the user experience might look like for this kind of a model, a guidance model. So now the user is back again here. And this time we're going to run with the guidance that we will be providing. So the user selects the account. And as soon as the account is loaded, we see an alert that's popped up over here. It says, hey, this account, it's a premium customer, and we have a high priority case that was opened today. And it's this call regarding the same case. Very simple alert. It allows you to handle these nuanced situations and provide a very personalized experience, which actually goes back to the Forrester research that we just reviewed. And there's also another point I want to make here, in that quite commonly when we do our discovery workshops, we see that there's a 60-40 kind of a split between call types and how well they are supported within your systems and tools. Typically, 60% of your call types are your major call types, You have a pretty good cross-section on this one. You have a pretty good handle on it. You're providing awesome tools for your reps. But for the remaining 40%, there might be 500 different call types, micro call types, if you will, that come in that make up that 40%. And that's where it becomes very difficult to provide a moment of truth kind of an experience to your customers. And that is where your best agents excel. That's where they shine. And this kind of a solution goes a long way in very quickly providing that superior experience for those edge scenarios. So let's say we say yes, then we are giving them a few options, and based on that, we go through a flow. The customer says, I want to change the install date. We continue with the process. We are automating information into the backend system. And then we are finally popping up a confirmation. So very quickly, we showed you a couple of examples. There are certainly other ways in which this can be done. Just giving you some context on different types of user experiences that we are able to provide. And we're certainly happy to answer any other questions you might have as we go into the latter part of the webinar. Okay, so that's the proactive guidance we looked at. We also looked at the reactive guidance, which is when we saw the pop coming in. One comment I want to make is that there is typically a very negative connotation related to scripting and call flows in customer service, in that none of us want our customer conversations to be scripted. We want those conversations to be very authentic, and we want to empower our employees. And that is exactly what we've been able to accomplish with this framework. And there are many ways in which you can do this, and here's just a very quick example, where you have a very rigid script on the left-hand side, and then you have relevant knowledge management articles, knowledge base articles on the right-hand side, so that the rep is equipped to handle any sidebar questions or objections that may come up during the call. So a very easy way for us to provide that real-time guidance and to also make knowledge management easy on the reps. They don't have to go looking for information. The relevant information is presented to them in context. And the business user can drive which knowledge management article needs to be presented at which time, and even automate those searches appropriately. And finally, from a measurement standpoint, it is very important that we provide detailed auditing and reporting, and this allows you to track hotspots within your processes, within your call flows, bottlenecks, so that you can go back and change your process or improve the user experience. There is much more granular data available for custom reporting, dashboarding, and things of that nature. Very quickly about some best practices. In general, it's really about respecting your best agents. It's really about listening to them, watching some calls, and blending in what you believe the process ought to be and what the process really is in the contact center environment, in the context of all the challenges that are in play. From a pitfall standpoint, it's very important to make sure that tribal knowledge aligns well with your strategic drivers. There can be some surprises there, so it's important that you're always making sure that that's tracking along. And lastly, as we just discussed, it is very important that we keep the experience authentic, and so that we don't go overboard on compliance and lose track of the agility of the conversation. Just to cite as an example. And here's how you can experience this. On the left-hand side is a brief case study showing some results from our experience of cloning best agents at Telefonica O2 in the UK, where it was pretty much a stealth project in the tech support group, where the senior reps started writing some scripts, and within weeks achieved significant results in reduced transfers, reduced AHT, and reduced training as well. We have a detailed case study available on our website, and also the agent scripting product, the visual designer that we walked you through, is actually available for a free 30-day trial. So we encourage you to download the product and see how easy it is to use. Happy to support you with any questions you might have regarding the complexities that you deal with day to day, and how we can help you manage those complexities and still allow you to clone your best agents.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation, Kumaran?
Absolutely, Lee.
Okay, well, thank you once again for your very informative presentation. We'll now answer a few questions that have already been added to the Q&A window. Let's see, the first question we have here says, how does this compare to Unified Desktop?
Unified Desktop, yeah. So both, as we saw in the Forrester slide, both Unified Desktop and Real-Time Guidance are solutions that focus on providing a personalized user experience, and they help reduce complexities in the contact center environment. With Unified Desktop, you're looking at application complexity, consolidating applications. With Real-Time Guidance, you're looking at streamlining the user experience much more, providing process guidance, and dealing with process complexities. Or if you have a very specific application that is difficult to deal with, process guidance can provide deeper benefits. And that's primarily the difference.
Okay, great. Let's see, we have another question here. This just come in. Do the underlying applications have to support this technology, or can you use this on any application?
Sure. So these solutions are applicable very broadly across enterprise applications, Windows, web, or host applications, and we have a lot of experience working with packaged applications as well. Typically, we go through an initial validation process to make sure that we are able to integrate with these applications through the presentation layer. And it's also important to keep in mind that the technologies that we discussed today are completely SOA capable, so we are able to consume any and all APIs that you may already have, which makes integration a breeze. Okay,
let's read our next question here. Someone asked, what if some agents are seasoned veterans? Might they get upset at these the bubbles that pop up?
That's a very good question. It goes back to our need to provide for an authentic experience. And the solution is a role-based solution. So based on the user's roles, their privileges, their skill levels, we're able to provide for different types of experiences. So we can make sure that a junior rep gets step-by-step guidance, while the senior rep might see limited guidance for specific flows and scenarios. Lee, was there?
I'm sorry, I'm here. The next question that's come up in our Q&A window is, I see how this approach would allow me to clone my subject matter experts. Can you speak on how applicable this is for my outsourced centers?
Sure. So the solution we discussed today, it's a web-based solution, and it is definitely something that you can extend to your outsourced centers, just as you make it available for your own centers. We have a lot of experience working with Citrix, VDI, and other deployment models and architectures that are quite common in these blended environments. It's certainly an option to clone your best practices within your own operations and make it available to outsourced operations as well.
Okay, great. Now, Kumaran, for the sake of time, because it's growing short, we have several questions lined up in our Q&A window. I'll let you look at some of these questions and answer them directly.
Sure. We have a question from Satya asking how we can integrate Siebel CRM or SAP with Jakarta. So there are definitely a number of ways in which we are able to integrate with packaged applications like SAP or Siebel. Both SAP and Siebel expose APIs that we are able to leverage to perform automations, to provide event-driven guidance on top of these applications. And we are also able to leverage back-end server-side APIs that are exposed by these platforms. So, in a nutshell, there are a number of options, both at the presentation layer and at the back end, to exchange information and to provide this guidance.
Okay. You can go on to your next question that you'd like.
Sure. Let me see. Is there a technical performance evaluation module? I believe the question is really around the performance considerations related to the solution, and so the content that you saw on the left-hand side that provides the guidance, that's a web-based experience. It's rendered in simple HTML. It's a very lightweight web application. And in terms of the guidance itself, we are talking about an automation component that will run on the local machines, which is also a very lightweight footprint. And we're happy to address these questions in much more detail. And I see that there are actually a few more questions in the Q&A panel. It looks like we're running short of time, but we'll make sure that we get back to you on these questions.
Okay, Karan, we have, let's see, one more question here. It's a good question. The person says, putting aside the technology, how should you go about starting a project like this?
Sure. So absolutely. So it's, as we discussed, we would definitely recommend starting from the ground up, assembling your high performers, assembling your subject matter experts, and really asking them about your most exposed call types, if you will, the call types where you think other agents are hurting from a performance, from a compliance standpoint. And by identifying those big rock items, if you will, and also identifying some of the best practices from the subject matter experts, that gives you a very firm foundation to go out, build these process flows, and then provide that guidance to your reps. And we would recommend that you start small with a limited group of users. That way you can not only leverage the auditing and reporting that the system provides, but also get some real feedback from actual users. And once you validated that in a small group of, let's say, 20, 30 users, then you're pretty much ready for prime time to roll it out to the broader operation itself.
Okay, thanks, Kumran. To keep to our time schedule, I'm going to choose this last question from the Q&A window and wrap it up today. The question is, they say they understand the concept, but ask you to speak about revealing specific without revealing customer names, and we thank you for putting that part in there in your question. What kind of training time reduction do you see in your implementations?
Okay, that's a good one. We typically see anywhere from 20 to 80% training time reduction. I know it's a broad range. On average, I would say it's somewhere between 40-50%. It's primarily because, as you saw, the system provides some kind of a self-learning capability in that as you handle these call flows, you educate yourselves on